guys, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And before I get into the film of the video, a couple other Giallo pickups I did that you can expect a review for is 1968's Death Laid an Egg. And this is another one from Raro Video. I've been getting a few of those lately, but Murder Obsession, which I've been hearing very mixed things about. This is actually one from the 80s. And it comes with two versions. I'm going to watch the original Italian one because it's longer. But at the same time, I picked up this film, and this is the one I'll be reviewing, and it's 1972's So Sweet, So Dead. Not to be confused with Umberto Lenzi's 1969 film, So Sweet, So Perverse, which is also known as Paranoia, which Orgasmo is also known as Paranoia, also Umberto Lenzi. And not to be confused with Troy Howarth's Giallo Encyclopedia, So Deadly, So Perverse. Yeah, lots of so this, so that titles. But its original title is The Slasher is the Sex Maniac, which is kind of what this original cover was and the one that you'll see in the thumbnail. But it was also known as Penetration, which, when this was released in the States in 1976, I think a lot of the violence was toned down, and they actually put hardcore pornographic inserts with different actors in it to make it appeal more to the pornographic market. And actually, I believe it was Farley Granger, the lead in the film who plays Inspector Capuana, was going to file a lawsuit because I think those inserts made it look like he was the one in those hardcore shots. And I'm guessing one of these I bought actually had the hardcore inserts put into it. Might have been this one actually, because this one also has an alternate American version which is called Plucked. I know one of them said it had the hardcore inserts put back into them. But either way, this is just a bare bones Code Red Blu-ray, and it was directed by, well, this says Robert Montero, but his full name I think is Roberto Bianchi. Yeah, Roberto Bianchi Montero. And it was written by him and Luigi Angelo. And the music is by Giorgio Gaslini, and he's known more for jazzy type scores, which is present. But there's also more pieces of music with Etta Della'Orso, who does these beautiful, haunting vocals. And she's done it on scores like The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, Strip Nude for Your Killer, Short Night of Glass Dolls, this, What Have You Done to Solange, which I'll be doing soon. She's also a frequent Ennio Morricone collaborator. She did like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, I think the Dollars trilogy. And I really liked the score on this one. This was a great score, especially those pieces and the way they were used as well. And it stars, again, Farley Granger, who he was actually in Strangers on a Train, Rope, and Arnold. So I mean, Hitchcock has inspired Giallo immensely, and now there's a frequent Hitchcock actor. But also, there's an appearance by Susan Scott. That's always great. Luciano Rossi, who had very bit roles in the Death Walks duology. He's the blonde, kind of crazy character. He plays one in this too, but a much bigger role. Uh, Femi Benusi, who is my uh, second Italian Giallo crush. After Fennec, of course. She was in Strip Nude for Your Killer. Silva Koskina, Silvana Tranquilli, Annabella Incontrera, Chris Abram, Chris Donnell. Stars all those people. And yeah, there's a lot I like about that. I like the twist, which I kind of suspected that person in the very beginning, but then I kind of forgot about him because it's one of those things where they'll put it in front of you and then they'll take it away and then you kind of forget. But I was kind of suspecting, what if it's that person? I also just like the concept. I mean, 1972 is probably the biggest and best year for Giallo films. And even by then, it was kind of getting to the point of, okay, a lot of the MOs and motives are more or less the same. But there hasn't been one quite like this, and it's, even though the killer looks as generic as possible, you know, fedora, stocking, even though it's black, but a stocking, black coat, black gloves, uses straight razor or switchblade. It, although being almost entirely dressed like a silhouette, is still a generic Giallo costume. The concept is the killer is going around killing unfaithful women. And so they're dubbing him the sex maniac. Although all Giallo does that, it makes more sense in this. But also, this seems to be the perfect blend of the 60s pre-Argento Giallo, where it's all about the immorality and the sort of perversions or wrongdoings of high society and wealthy people. And all the women and their lovers in this, or at least most of the lovers, but all the women in this and their husbands are all part of the upper society. And there's a quote by one of the suspects in here where he says something to the effect of, you know, the best families nowadays don't run on principles. And something about who best to be immoral with, but to find someone who's just as immoral. So that does play a big role in this. It also throws a lot of the same things you see in Giallo but might not think about. Like, it really ups the ante. I mean, we have not just a spiral staircase, but a death with the body laid out on a spiral staircase. We have J&B whiskey, of course. We have a red phone, but of course the red phone is it's like a white phone, but like wrapped in like red suede or canvas or something. Also, the inspector, played by Farley Granger, just the way his mannerisms are and like the way he speaks, he kind of looks like an older, more thin Joe Spinell of Maniac and Chi-Chi from Godfather 2. May he rest in peace, but this is who he reminded me of. Now, of course, like Killers 1 of 13, even though I could watch it in English, there's no Wikipedia or anything, so I had to take notes. But this actually opens up with the first victim's already killed. It's the crime scene. And we see this beautiful woman naked. She got all these stabs and slashes, which the up close, you can almost see a pulse when it zooms in. I will say, yeah, some of the stabbings look very acting, very slow. And my favorite scene in this film, which takes place on a beach, it is kind of, they do run kind of daintily. It does look very fake. But I'll say the effects look fairly decent for as simple as they are. She's the wife of a general. She was found in a hotel room. And Inspector Capuana, played by Farley Granger, is put on the case. And then we see the second woman, which is the one played by Femi Benusi. She's the wife of a politician. And this is my favorite scene of the movie, where she's attacked in her home or her lover's home, but then she's stabbed, but she runs outside, and we get this slow motion chase scene on a beach. And there's a lot of reasons why I love this. One, when the slow motion kicks in, there's no audio except for just the crashing of the waves, so it really puts us in the atmosphere. The camera's kind of off center, so she's running towards the camera, but we can see behind her, and the killer is kind of out of focus, but it puts that dread behind her. I mean, if you're being chased by a killer on the beach, you're probably just going to hear the waves. So it really, and it, it puts the threat right there as well. And also where it's literally head to toe black, where it's kind of sunlight. I mean, when she was attacked inside, it was night. Now it's somewhat daytime, so I'm guessing early morning. But it's kind of sunny, so it really makes him look like a silhouette. Also, we see a lot of the killer's face. Even when a killer's masked, it's usually quick shots, but the camera will hold on the killer for a while. And yeah, it is kind of daintily running, and she falls very, it does look silly, but the way it's orchestrated with that chase, I think, is just very well done. A very inspired, filmmaking. It looks great. You got the tension, you got the atmosphere. It looks great. So she's stabbed, and then it really sets up how all the women that are killed in this seem to be in a group of friends. They're in this massage salon, and they're all kind of talking about, oh, we have a lot to worry about because we're all unfaithful, or aren't we? Or you are, but I'm not. I almost thought they made it sound like they were going to try to set up the killer, because the killer also takes photos of them having their affair, then leaves them at the crime scene, but scratches out the male lover's face. So this one woman, also this does do a good job at setting things up and then not explaining it until much later, like Giallo will do, but it feels more obvious in this one. The inspector talks to the coroner, Professor Casali, who really understands how the killer works, knows that the killer was grabbing them from behind, slashing their throat. His assistant, who's played by Luciano Rossi, he's the over-the-top, obvious weirdo that they're trying to set up for the red herring. He loves his job. He loves making the women beautiful again by erasing all marks of murder. He even takes photos of them and hangs them up in his house because he's proud of his work. The inspector looks into him, and he even says, I live here alone in this small house because no woman will want to marry me because of my job. So it really sets him up as the killer. But he doesn't really show up much after that. So it's kind of like they present it, then it goes away. And even though it does do a good job at answering things they set up earlier on, there is the subplot of there's this one murder with a witness, and the witness is too afraid to go to the police because she thinks she'll be targeted next. But then, like, after that's explained, we don't ever see her again or hear from her again. So some things they do set up and then not get back to, which is fine. I mean, the rest of the movie's just fine. Also, I noticed that each woman that's killed, either right when they're about to be killed or shortly before, they're always wearing pink. I mean, whether it's a button up shirt, a sweater, a bathrobe, or like a nightgown, it's always pink. So that's another thing I noticed. I'm not quite sure when to get into spoilers with this, but it also sets up that some of the husbands are having affairs as well. Like uh, Femi Benusi, her lover, his lawyer is having an affair with Susan Scott. And Susan Scott's husband is he's disabled. He can't get around without crutches. Oh, but also when Benusi is killed, we do get this long scene of her funeral march, which, yeah, the slow motion in the funeral march does kind of eventually does get to the point of, all right, I get it. But that score with Della'Orso's vocals works so well. And the reason why they're filming it, or is being filmed, is because they want to find strangers. Which Capuana does say, hold on or stop. And I don't think it ever addresses who he saw. But eventually, yeah, I'll just get into spoilers now. But I do highly recommend this. In many ways, it is a very generic Giallo, but it has an original enough concept, good enough kills, even though there's not much variety. I mean, there's a bunch of stabbings and throat slitting, one strangulation. That's pretty much it. But there's enough twists and turns, and it does get much better, like in the last 20 or so minutes. Like, there's a lot of tension building, so it's definitely worth it. And I really enjoyed this Giallo, so highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Is it one of my favorites? No. Is it an honorable mention? Probably not. I mean, maybe if I did a top 20, because I really did enjoy it. But yeah, if you're looking for anything new or inspired, really, other than the slow motion beach chase or the overall concept, might not find it. The score is still great though. But getting into spoilers now, So Sweet, So Dead. So eventually, Susan Scott is killed. It sets up that she's having an affair with the lawyer. Then she's killed in the backyard of her own home. She's witnessed by the lawyer's daughter, which I think they're like next door neighbors. And then the husband, he he's calling for Susan Scott, so he decides to get up, go see if he can find her, and he trips on the marble stairs, goes down, dies. And so then at this point, the lawyer's wife, she says that she's going to visit her sick mother, but I think she was going to either have an affair or continue an affair or to run and hide from the sex maniac. But it shows the lawyer husband, standing from behind watching her board the train, and then she's killed on the train, which she's stabbed with a switchblade. But I do like the lighting. It's very blue. It does look good. So then when the lawyer's questioned, this I did like. There are some good ideas in here. Like, there's this sort of short legal battle between the lawyer and Capuana, because he knows how questions are asked. So he's like, can you tell me where you were at the time of her death? He says, can you reword it? Because I don't know the time of her death. I don't want to incriminate myself. So he rewords his question. I like that idea. But this is also when he states, he's the one that says, the best of families exist without principles, and being the best part about being immoral is to be that with someone else who is. So that that really also sets the tone for just who this group of people are. Also, earlier on, there was this one woman who was having an affair in a car, and the killer was taking photos. She's the next one to get killed. She's in her home, and she's setting up a bath. And this I also like, because she turns on the bath water. The mirror fogs up. She goes to wipe it, and the killer slowly emerges from behind her. She gets stabbed a couple times, and then she starts crawling up the spiral staircase, and it looks like she's trying to get through a trap door or like a hatch. She unlocks it, but it looks like she's still pulling it. She gets killed. Her lover was on the way, and I thought this was silly. The killer notices that the boyfriend's at the door, so instead of going out a back door, it jumps out a front window right by the door. Of course, the boyfriend sees him. They get in a fight, runs off. Boyfriend goes in, and when he finds her body, it's like this downward shot of her like body draped over these spiral stairs, mixed with blood in photos. And if you look at her stomach, you can almost see a breath. Excuse me. Also, she was wearing a pink bathrobe. At this point, someone calls the cops, and it's this guy who says he's the killer. He's got porn on his walls, which actually before that, we see Capuano with, folded black clothing, jacket, hat, and gloves, and he wraps it in newspaper, tucks it, and we're thinking, what's this gonna mean? And for a while, I thought they weren't gonna address it, but then they get to this guy's house, and Capuano's looking around, he finds it. And it implies that he either planted it or he set all this up and this guy's acting. But the point was to have him arrested, because this whole case is a news explosion. It's publicity everywhere. Every time there's a kill, we get like a newspaper flash. So by making it seem like a 2-bit wacko is getting the credit, it will draw the killer out. And it works. The killer calls Capuano at his office, so he starts recording it. He says, you made a big mistake, giving that guy the credit. Now I'm going to make you pay. You're going to be a laughingstock. You're going to be run out of town. And I'm going to kill your wife. Capuano says, but you only kill unfaithful women, so that doesn't apply. And he says, oh, you're the only one in town that doesn't know your wife's unfaithful. I have the photos to prove it. Capuano hangs up. I think he calls his house, and these two people, I was confused as to who they were. I think it's a maid answers and says, no, she's at this salon. So he calls the salon. The receptionist says she hasn't been here yet. So when she gets off the phone, she goes to talk to the hairdresser. And he says, oh, no, she hasn't shown up yet. So the receptionist says, oh, I think she's getting her stories mixed up, because just got a call from home. So that further implies, stories. She has to get out of the house. Killer's probably right. And so then Argento inspired, because he keeps playing the phone recording over and over and over again, which when we see the killer on the phone, which was that shot, the camera pans over to this large grandfather clock. And then after he's made his phone calls and he's just listening to the recording, he's drawing things that chime, bells, whatnot, because he hears it in the recording and he's trying to draw what could make sense. And he draws a large clock. So that clue over a phone recording, a small noise in the background, just like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which I would say probably is a better film than this. It's one of my favorite Gialli. So then he recognizes the clock. He goes to the home. It doesn't show us whose home it is at first. He finds this folder that says, oh, there's this couple that was going to be eloped. The groom was jilted at the altar, while this woman was killed in an auto accident with her lover. She was the bride. So we're like, okay, that's the killer's motive. He was left at the altar by his fiancée. She was with her lover, got in a car accident. So now he's punishing unfaithful women. But Capuano also finds the killer's darkroom and sees pictures of her with Roberto, who I think was their driver, because he has flashbacks to earlier scenes in the film when he's around. And there was one where they were going to go to the beach and she talks about him driving. So I think he was her chauffeur, but I could be wrong. So then the killer calls Roberto's house, tells him to get out because Capuano knows. Now, I think this goes into the misogyny that this film is known for, or the misogynistic cynicism, because he's punishing unfaithful women, not the unfaithful husbands or the men in these affairs, knowing these women are married. Just the women, I guess, is just his own sort of psychotic obsession. So, of course, Capuano's wife shows up at Roberto's house. Then the killer shows up, and she puts on pink lingerie, like a nightgown. And I really like this scene because this plays into the whole immoral, lack of principles sort of motif that was set up. Capuano shows up at the house, but he stands at the window, and I think it hints that as she's being stabbed and dying, like it's a faraway shot through his vision, through the window, she sees him and reaches out for him, but she's stabbed again and killed. But it freezes, the camera freezes on his face, and we get flashbacks to her with him. He has this conflict of, do I stop and save my cheating wife, or do I let him kill her to get the same kind of revenge he's seeking and then arrest him? He goes for the latter. He lets her die. Then he goes in, and she scratched his face, ripped some of the stocking. It's the coroner. It is Professor, is it Caselli? Corelli? I think it was Caselli. Casali. Yeah. And he just shoots him. So I was kind of thinking it was him at the beginning because he knew so much detail about the multiple murders. And he did defend Gaston, his assistant, when the inspector assumed him. I guess to go along with the theory, he doesn't want these other people to get the credit, especially ones that aren't as superior in motive to him. And then he hugs his dead wife and the film ends. So, I mean, yeah, even the motive's kind of original. It is like a cynical, one-sided revenge plot. But it fits with, the motive of the killer. He was cheated on. He's going after cheating women. I haven't seen one that blatant in a Giallo. I thought it worked. It was very simple. I mean, it didn't have all this inheritance kind of motive and plot mixed in with it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's kind of generic how it goes about things, but it does have some inspired originality to it, which I appreciated. Love the score. Love that slow motion chase scene. I like some of the small ideas, like having the fake arrest to draw the killer out, or like the legal game of questions. I did like Farley Granger as Capuana. I bought him as this hard-boiled detective really trying to solve this case. Love the twist at the end. The motive and the MO was very simple. You can kind of easy to wrap your head around in the context of, okay, that's why he's doing it. It's not super far-fetched. But yeah, I really enjoyed this Giallo. Very, very solid. And again, even if you stuck through the spoilers, highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. So that's So Sweet, So Dead, and stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.